everybody. I'm Kim Tolson, and I run the insurance billing for Telehealth group. And this is one of the group members, Arlene, and I'm going to butcher your last name. How do you say your last name?
Boumel.
Boumel. Boumel.
No R in it, Boumel.
Oh, Boumel. Okay, yes. And she's a contributor in the group, and I just love all your posts. You're so helpful in the group. It's wonderful. But I noticed that Arlene takes a lot of EAPs. So I asked her if she would come in here and meet with us briefly and answer some questions about EAPs, because I get questions about this all the time, and it seems like you're kind of an expert with them. So I just wanted to pick your brain and give everybody this information. And we came up with a list of questions. We're just going to kind of go down through them and hear what she has to say. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, what is the mindset for an EAP session versus a regular therapy session? Because I know it's a different type of mentality when you're doing EAP versus a regular therapy session.
So EAP is supposed to be short term. It's not always. I have EAP companies that give 12 sessions. I have EAP companies that tell the client that they can have 6 sessions, and then when those 6 are up, if they come back with a different problem, they can have 6 more, and then so, you know, for some companies, it really does not end up being short-term. It really depends on the EAP.
Okay.
Most major insurance companies, Cigna, United, Humana, they have an EAP as part of it, and they pretty much, when you sign up with those insurance companies, you're signing up for EAP as well. And when you see those clients, I really don't see them as any different than mental health, because essentially you have to file your claim the same way. There needs to be a diagnosis. And essentially either they're going to be with you, and typically, like for example, United, I see a client for 5 sessions. They want to keep going. It goes into their mental health benefits and nothing really changes.
Right. Yeah, that's what I found myself.
And there are other EAPs that literally give you 5 sessions or 6 sessions or 3, whatever they give you, and it's a very short-term kind of thing. The one thing I try to keep in mind is that the employer is paying for it.
Okay, right.
I've had people come to me wanting, let's say, they're filing for disability, or they're fighting with their employer about something. No, you can't do that with an EAP. And I explained,
good point.
You're coming through your EAP. I cannot fill out disability paperwork because these benefits are being paid for by your employer.
Oh, yeah, that is such a good point. Yes, okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So short-term mindset, it's really interesting. I'm working with an EAP right now that's giving clients 12 sessions, Aspire.
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of them.
And it really depends on the employer, but like I have a lot of Coast Guard clients, and those are getting 12 sessions. And when I spoke to them about it, they were like, well, you know, you need to let these clients know that this is supposed to be short term. And so, you know, you are supposed to send them somewhere else if you think it's going to be more than just a couple sessions. But it's really hard to do that, because the client is saying, wait a minute, I get 12 sessions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I pretty much will give them, you know, if they want to keep going, I just use whatever EAP sessions are available.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. And like you're saying, I mean, it's supposed to be that short-term mindset, but if it's 12 sessions, I mean, you've probably done a ton of therapy with these people at that point, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I always tell people, because this was something I had a big issue with, because United is notorious for sending people through EAP, which pays less, and which doesn't pay for a 90791, which is your initial session. And so it's sort of like, God, all these assessments that I'm doing and I'm not getting paid for them. They told me that when the EAP is over, let's say you get 5 EAP sessions, your 6th session, which is utilizing mental health benefits, can be billed as a 90791. So
yeah, that's wild.
Right? So what I do is I do a brief EAP assessment at the beginning of every EAP. It's not nearly as extensive as my biopsychosocial.
Okay.
And EAP client who's continuing under their mental health benefits, I will typically, for those clients, if a new client, I'll do an extensive biopsychosocial. For an EAP client who's switching over, I do a note that basically says, this client is now utilizing their mental health benefits, And so I did a further assessment and got some additional information, but I'm not really doing my long biopsychosocial form because it's sort of,
You already know. Yeah.
yeah. So
That's a good tip. Yeah. Because you definitely want to get that initial assessment in there. That not
you
as
have,
one.
you know what, they can call it EAP, they can call it what, the bottom line is your first session is always going to be an
Of
initial
course.
session.
Yeah. That's good to know, though. That's a good tip to just kind of do a brief sort of EAP assessment and then do the full one later if you get the opportunity. Yeah, that's a really good tip. Thank you. Yeah, because you need a full session too. Because how long are most EAPs? They're like 45 minutes, right? Is that the
I generally keep it because I'm being paid less for them. And
Yeah.
they're really timed. I mean, there's no EAP company that I know that says it has to be this long. I consider an EAP to be a 90834.
Yeah.
It's a 5-minute session no matter how I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way I've always done them. And then if I switch over to mental health benefits later on, I do my assessment, and then I a lot of times will do a 90837 and do a longer session, but I won't do a longer session with the EAP.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
They pay less, so I sort of figure I'm getting paid for my time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm kind of going off the list here. Let me go back, direct myself back to number 2. Let's see. A list of the companies you work with and the ones that are best for you in your experience and why.
Okay.
Yeah. I know you work with a bunch, right?
I've got the list. I mean, I can go down the list, and I'm not going to give you how much my pay is.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah,
I'm
sure.
going to tell you that generally EAPs are going to pay. I mean, when I look at the list of EAPs, pretty much they're paying in the 60 to 80 range.
Okay.
$80. Very rarely are you going to get more than that.
Yeah.
So I consider the easy ones, the ones that refer people to me that pay at least reasonable,
Yeah.
and that pay quick.
Good.
I go down the list. So, for example, Aetna has their own EAP. It's called Resources for Living. They have a sort of convoluted website. They used to have a thing where you would mail in the claim form to them,
Mm-hmm.
and now a website that you can actually log into. It used to connect from the net, but now it connects directly from Availity.
Oh, right.
But you have to register to do the EAPs that way. It's probably one of the worst websites that I've ever seen in terms of filing EAP claims. And I had to have somebody at Aetna send me a step-by-step on how to do it. But now I do it pretty quick, and I do those on, they pay pretty quickly. I mean, they're sort of average. I don't get a ton of Aetna.
Okay.
Behavioral is a company that I've been with for years. I don't think I've ever gotten an EAP from them.
Who is it? The video cut out for a second.
American Behavioral.
Oh, okay. American Behavioral.
I do Anthem EAP. I do not do Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield because I am not a Blue Cross Blue Shield provider, but they've been really easy to work with. They pay
awesome.
They pay pretty well. I like working with them. They recently upgraded their website up until actually literally like a week ago. With Anthem, they send you a form. You basically fill it out, put the date of service, and fax it back to them.
Oh, easy.
And now they have a new thing where you can literally log into their website right on there. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Beacon Health sends me a ton.
Oh,
and
wow.
With Beacon, I'm a mental health provider as well as EAP. It is very rare that I get a client that doesn't come in from EAP. I almost never get one. I think Beacon pretty much offers EAP to all of their clients.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that they pay in 1 or 2 days. They pay very quickly.
That's awesome.
They are real easy to build. They have a website that the Beacon Health website, which is, it only takes me a minute to submit an EAP claim. So I love that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good. Okay.
Let's see. A new one that I just joined. I don't really know much about them. Business Health Services.
Oh, okay.
They don't pay great, and I haven't really had anybody. I just joined them about a month ago.
Okay.
Cigna. Cigna is just like United. You bill through a regular claim form. they pay less for EAP than they do for mental health, but a lot of your EAP clients end up becoming mental. They do require a special code. It's 99404. They do, so you have to have an authorization number. And that's something that I need to say up front. Every EAP has to have an authorization up front, or you can't.
That's right. Good point.
So when someone calls me and says, I'm coming in for my EAP, I have to know what is the name of that EAP and did you get an authorization?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
right. When they call for the appointment, just say, make sure they have that authorization already. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll just quickly go through the list of
Okay.
other.
Thank you.
Employee and Family Resources. I have one called Employers Health Network. Aspire. Now, Aspire I've been a provider for them for a pretty long time, and they pay decent. But they recently, when I had asked about telehealth right before the pandemic, they pay a lot less telehealth than they do for regular. And I was sort of like, I don't want to be a telehealth provider at that rate. It's way less than I would ever accept. And then for the so I had, I'm getting a lot of referrals from them right now.
Okay.
Pandemic, they're paying at the regular in-person rate, but when the pandemic is over, I will not continue because I'm not going to be going back into my office anytime soon, and I'm not going to accept the telehealth rate that they're offering.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
Health Advocate EAP. There's one called CareBridge EAP.
Oh, yeah.
Called Health Management Systems EAP. These are all EAPs that I'll get, like, I might not hear from them for 2 months, and then I get a client.
Mm-hmm.
Humana, I don't think I've ever had a Humana EAP, but because I'm a Humana provider, I'm also a Humana EAP provider. Humana,
Gotcha.
company run by a company, they used to have a company called Core Health.
Uh-huh.
And then they had another one, I forget the name of it. And I used to get EAP back then, but I don't think they're doing a whole lot of EAP right now.
Okay.
Magellan is real easy to build directly through their website. Minds Associates is one that I belong to, but I've never gotten a referral from them. United Behavioral Health, I would say a good portion of my practice is United clients.
Yeah. Okay.
So to me, and a lot of people say they don't want to accept the United, the EAP rate, which is obviously less than if you're seeing a United client. I get a ton of referrals from United.
Mm-hmm.
They pay quickly, they pay accurately, their website is really easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those EAP clients become regular mental health clients after the EAP services are done. I know a lot of people don't like United. I have no problem working with them at all.
I love working with them. Yeah.
They're easy. They pay quickly. I mean, usually I get I get payment from United at least, I think it's once a week pretty much, based on the clients I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. You hear horror stories about it, but.
One of the things I did when I decided I was moving to telehealth was I Googled EAP, something like good EAP companies. And I came up with some lists that were showing up online, and I literally went down the list and said, I've heard of that one. And I wrote to every single one, asked them, what are your EAP rates? Do you allow for telehealth? Do you service my area? Because I'm in South Florida. Some of them were like, we'd love to hire you, but we're in Portland, Oregon, and we're not taking people from your part of the country.
Right.
About 3 or 4 new EAPs a couple months ago just from doing that.
That's such a great idea. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And a lot of these EAPs, like when it's CareBridge EAP or something like that, do you find that you take their primary health insurance if they want to transfer over, or how does that happen for you usually?
EAP has nothing to do with what their primary health insurance.
Right.
So you could get somebody for CareBridge that has an insurance that I'm in network with, or they might have an insurance that I'm not in network with.
Okay, right.
I usually check with people up front what their insurance is. I let them know right up front if I don't accept their insurance.
That's a good plan.
It's more important if you only have a client there are clients who only get 3 EAP sessions. That's not very many.
Right.
Referral this week, and I actually did not accept it. From one of these companies that's relatively new for me, they gave the client 1 session, and it was for marital counseling.
Wow.
And I sort of said, I can't do any kind of, my first session is an assessment.
Right.
But if they only get 3 sessions, I try to clarify with them right up front what their insurance is. And I let them know after the 3 sessions are up, they're going to be moving to the insurance. So if I'm not in network, they need to know that right up front.
Yeah, that's really smart, because I know that can be a problem for people. Like, you get started with somebody and then you can't transfer because the primary insurance is not one the provider takes.
The
Yep.
other thing is there are certain plans, and it really depends on the employer. I remember this used to happen with Magellan. I would get a notice with the EAP that you were not allowed to self-refer.
Oh, yeah, I know. Some of
But
them are
every
like
now
that.
and then you'll get one, and it's like you can see them for the 6 sessions or 8 or 5 or whatever they've been given. And when those are up, you have to refer out to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I've heard that. I've heard it used to be really like that, and they've changed it some. Are the ones you work with mostly now pretty good about letting you just take them on after
Yeah,
that?
it's been a while since I've had one that doesn't allow some,
Okay.
but you always have to make sure that you can do that, because some of them, and people don't like that. You know, they've worked with you for 5 or 6 sessions, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now you're ready to, your EAP sessions are used up, but I'm not allowed to continue seeing you, so I have
Oh,
someone else.
not a good continuity of care, I don't think.
Haven't seen that happen in a while.
Okay, that's good to know. I hope they're changing that, because it seems like that wouldn't be the best thing for the client. Um, okay, so the next thing, we kind of started to touch on it, but it's basically, how have you negotiated the rates? Do you tend to do it up front when you join a company, or over the years, do you try to negotiate higher rates with these companies?
Well, I'm not sure what I would do right now. I mean, if
Okay,
I've been with a lot of these companies, I've been doing this for many, many years. So
right.
it's been over the years I've renegotiated. If I had a new client approach, new company approach me and ask me to join the EAP, I would ask right up front, what are your rates?
Yeah.
Negotiable. If they're not negotiable, but the rate is within a realm of what I would accept, I would probably accept it. I have a list in my little book here. I keep a list of all the insurance companies and EAPs I'm credentialed with, what they paid for what codes and whatever. Once a year, I put aside a day. I literally go down the list,
Mhm.
provide relations with every company, ask them, I'd like to speak to somebody about renegotiating my rates. They'll usually give me the name of the person to talk to or how I have to do it. I submit rate requests. Sometimes they give them, sometimes they don't. And typically what I'll do is, let's just say I'm getting $65.
Mhm.
Get a letter saying, this is significantly less than I'm being paid by other companies. I'd like to request my rate be increased. And I'll give something that I know I'm not going to get, like to $85.
Right. Like,
And
ask, aim high.
I aim high, and if they come back and they say, well, we can't do that, but we'll give you 70 or 75, that's fine. That works for me. It's still a raise. And I do that once a year with every company.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is perfect. Yeah, you and I had talked about that another time we were talking, and I was like, I have to really start implementing that for all the insurance companies.
Some of them will just flat out say no. I just got a raise from Cigna. It has been years since they were willing to accept anything from, every year.
Wow.
Sorry, we're not giving increases. And then all of a sudden this year they did. So you never know when you're going to hit it.
That's awesome. No, I think that's such a good plan. Just literally every year, just do it. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
That's how
that
I do that.
tip. Um, okay, so we kind of touched on this already, but the question was, how is billing different, meaning the CPT codes that you would use. So you mentioned the 99044? Is that
99404.
right? Is that just for Cigna, or do you find that you do that for a lot of them?
No,
Like,
Cigna is the only company that I know that uses 99404. Plus, you have to make sure you put your authorization number on the claim form.
right, okay,
Of course, with any company that you're submitting a regular claim, there has to be a diagnosis.
yeah.
So Cigna does require a diagnosis. United Behavioral Health, Optum, they require an HJ modifier.
Oh, right.
So it's always going to be 90834. You're never going to do 90791 or 90837. It's 90834, HJ modifier, and then there has to be an authorization number listed on your claim form, and then there has to be a diagnosis. A lot of, basically, those companies that require, which is basically Cigna and Optum, are pretty much the ones that do it that way.
Yeah.
Companies like Magellan, Beacon, they have their own websites that you log into and do the EAP claim directly there. Now,
Mm-hmm.
interesting, Magellan does ask you for, they ask for diagnosis when you're doing that.
Oh, right. Okay. When
And
you
it
log in.
when you log in and you start filling out the EAP claim form, I think they call it a CA, no, that might be Beacon that does that. They all have different terms for what they call their EAP forms. But you require a diagnosis. Beacon, you log into their website and do it that way. It's real quick. It takes 2 seconds and they do not require a diagnosis.
Oh, nice.
And then basically most of the ones that I deal with, like CareBridge has their own website. Aspire has their own website. So you literally log into their website, click on file a claim, takes 2 seconds.
Wow.
It's done. Some of them, the ones that are a little bit more a pain, are the ones that send you a form that might have spot for you to put 6 dates of service.
Oh, I've used those before. I think,
Right.
I can't
And
remember.
what I do with those is I create a PDF on my computer because those have to be faxed in.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say with those is a lot of people might wait till they finish 5 or 6 sessions and then they submit it. I always do claims, EAP claims, immediately after the session.
Smart. Mm-hmm.
So
Is that just so you get paid immediately, or is it, do you just find it's easier than just keeping track of 6 sessions?
it's easier for me to keep track, and it also ensures that I get paid, because a client could have, let's say, 6 EAP sessions. They schedule the first 2, then something comes up for them and they don't reschedule right away. They might not reschedule for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Meantime, I'm like, okay, well, I haven't gotten paid for these first 2 sessions. So I have found it's much easier to always file your claims immediately. I never let them pile up.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. If somebody disappears, you lose track, you forget about them, yeah, I totally get that. That's really smart. You've
So
got so many good tips.
I've been doing it for a long time.
Right.
So a lot of people think it's hard. You learn as you go.
Yeah, right.
You learn as you go.
And you just keep it in your notebook, like this company, this is how much they pay, this is when I asked for the raise, and this is the procedure. Like you just kind of keep track of it like that.
I have a spreadsheet, and the only thing I really keep on the spreadsheet is what they pay.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I know once a year I'm going to go back and I'm going to contact them, and I'm going to go down, and I contact provider relations. I'm going to ask for a raise. I might or might not get it, but that's the only thing I really keep track of. I keep I have all my EAPs and insurance plans bookmarked on the
Nice.
computer, so I can get to their websites real easily.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Okay, I don't want to keep you all day. Let's see. So the next one, well, we kind of already talked about that one. Submitting a claim is different for an EAP versus regular billing. You just kind of covered that. A lot of them have their own websites they want you to use. Even if you're using Simple Practice, you would still go through the
Yeah,
web.
the way I use Simple Practice is I don't know how many of your listeners use Simple Practice.
True.
I love Simple
Me
Practice.
too.
So what
Big
I do
fan.
is I put those EAP companies down as an insurance company, and after the session, there has to be a diagnosis for Simple Practice to.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It could be a Z code.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter. I create a claim but don't submit it, and then when I get paid by the EAP, I go in and manually input that. That way I can keep track of everything.
Smart. Yeah, that's a good way to do
So.
it. Okay, good tip. Yes, thank you. Um, let's see, we talked about the diagnostic criteria for EAPs versus regular therapy sessions. So some of them want a diagnosis and some don't. It's basically what you learn as you start going through these companies.
Yeah, some of them want to, again, if it's Cigna or United, which really pretty much goes directly from EAP to mental health, they're going to want a diagnosis. The diagnosis typically is not going to change when I switch from EAP to mental health.
Yeah.
I consider those clients to be pretty much, I handle those just the way I would if it was a regular mental health claim. And companies like CareBridge and Aspire and Health Advocate, those are companies that are strictly standalone EAPs. They don't have a mental health component. They do not require diagnoses. And I consider those, I tell clients right up front, the one thing I didn't mention is that EAP companies, for the most part, want you to make sure that you are clarifying with the client how whatever their issue is impacting their work, because that's really what is paying for that EAP.
Good point.
If you're having problems with your marriage or substance abuse or whatever, it's going to impact your work.
Right.
So you want to make sure you address that specifically.
Like in your note.
In your notes, you need to make sure that you're addressing that. So
good point.
But they're not asking for a diagnosis, but the client needs to, and the other thing is they want to know right up front, is my employer going to know about this? No, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not allowed to have any contact with an EAP ever. And if I get a management referral, which happens sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
I am not allowed to have any contact with the employer, but I do report back to the person at the EAP who's the case manager for that case. So I sometimes tell them, yes, the person showed up. Yes, they have a substance abuse issue, or they don't. I've assessed them for this. These are the treatment goals that we have, but I will not ever share that information with the employer directly, and I'm not allowed to.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's such a good point. Right. Yeah, because I know people ask that. Well, is my work going to find out what I talk about?
No, not allowed to.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, that is such a good point, because I know people worry about that. Let's see. What's it going to ask you? Okay, so the next one we talked about is you're licensed in multiple states. Is there anything different that someone should know if they're working with EAPs across state lines, if they're licensed in multiple states?
No, the only thing about, I've had 2 licenses for, 30 some years. The 3rd license I added 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And that was sort of because it's from the state that I grew up in. So
Right.
friends there, and I was sort of like, well, when I left there, Pennsylvania, they
Yeah.
were licensing back in 1975. So I wasn't licensed there, and I just sort of thought, well, now I'm doing telehealth, I want to become licensed. The only thing I had to do, literally, I went down my list of EAPs and I sent an email to provider relations for each company that I'm credentialed with, saying, I have a 3rd license, I'm now licensed in Pennsylvania, here's a copy of my license, please add this to my my contract.
Nice.
And they did, and that was it. Now, some of them might not work in those states.
Yeah.
And each EAP might be working with only certain geographical areas. So I may never get an EAP client in Pennsylvania from a company that doesn't deal with Pennsylvania.
Right.
But I'll tell you, it really helped a lot, because I have noticed, like Aspire, for example, I'm licensed in 3 states, but I wasn't doing telehealth up until a year ago.
Right.
So all of a sudden, now I realize, I'm doing telehealth. Well, I can do this in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania too, not just Florida. And so I let them know that I'm getting a ton of referrals from Boston area and Philadelphia area.
Wow.
Which I never would have done a year ago, because here I am in South Florida.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So it opens up a lot of doors for more referrals.
Right. And they don't require anything different. Literally, you just let them know, great,
Yeah.
we can refer people to you from those 3 states.
That is awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Trying to think, we had a couple more, didn't we? Oh, just pros you find working with the EAPs and the cons. I think we kind of talked about those, but are there any others that really come to mind, the pros and cons?
The only cons with the EAPs, and a lot of people don't like the fact that they pay less. They pay less. I look at it as a really good way of filling up my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Those become full-time, regular mental health clients. And, you have to decide, what you're willing to accept in terms of pay.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with the EAP, because for me, over the years, when I started out years ago, that filled up a lot of my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, the other con is that insurance companies tend to pay a lot faster.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to sit, like Aspire is one of the ones I just mentioned. It takes them weeks to pay.
Oh, gotcha.
But I wait forever. On the other hand, I have Beacon, which literally, if I see an EAP client today on Beacon and I submit the claim today, because as I said, I do my claim literally at the time of the session, by tomorrow I will have been paid.
Wow, that's incredible. That's really good.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Over time, you learn which ones pay quickly and which ones pay slow.
Absolutely.
Certain ones you're going to be sitting on for a month or 2.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. And this, we didn't put this on the list, but I was just wondering, have you ever had any audits from EAPs or anything like that? Anybody requesting records reviews or anything?
Not for I've never ever had a records request for EAP, and in
Okay.
20 some years that I've been in private practice, I think I got audited once.
Yeah, me too. Like twice, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't really worry about it, but I
Mhm.
make sure I do, notes and everything. So if I did get audited, they would see a complete record.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's good to know. Do some of the EAPs want you to send progress notes in or not? Have you ever had that?
Years ago,
Yeah. Okay. Because I used to have to do that with one EAP.
I haven't seen that in many, many years. A lot of people
Okay.
have their own forms. And if you log into any of these websites, like Aspire, if you log in, it'll be, here's an assessment form. You don't have to do those. You don't have to use their forms.
Yeah.
And so I have my own forms that I've always used. And once upon a time, you did have to send in regular progress notes. I'm
Yeah.
probably 10 or 15 years. I haven't seen that in years.
Yeah. I remember I used to have to do that for one company. I can't remember who it was, but yeah. So I was just wondering. Okay. So you don't see that anymore. That's good. And we kind of talked about this already. How can you use the EAPs to build your practice? It sounds like they're good referral sources, and hopefully they'll convert to private clients if you can't take the insurance, or you take their primary insurance and they can just transfer over to regular clients, pretty much.
Right, and I guess my philosophy has always been this. $60 or $70 is better than $0.
Absolutely.
You're lucky enough to have 40 clients a week in your schedule and not have any openings. That's great. That's
Yeah.
the case for me. I mean, I've been in practice for years. I'll go through weeks where I don't have time to breathe and weeks where, wow, what happened this week? I only had, 15 clients this week. If I have things, hey, I don't care. I mean, I'd rather fill it with a client, an EAP client that pays 70 than not get paid for that hour of my time.
Totally.
If
Yeah.
I'm sitting here working all day anyway and I have an opening, why not?
Absolutely. That's how I look at it too. I didn't put this on the list, but so do most of the EAPs that you're taking now cover telehealth? Like, have you had any problems with that, or?
Well, it's interesting because I made the decision in January that I was going to I wanted to move into pretty much mostly telehealth. That's when you and I met, and we talked, and
Yeah.
how do I do? Because I started it with Simple Practice, and I was like, oh, I really like this. Oh, I don't really want to retire, but I'd love to be able to give up my office and work from home. So I went down the list, and I know that some of those have changed, but I have an EAP here that I wrote down. Aspire was going to pay a lot less for
Oh,
telehealth.
that's right.
Some of them, Health Management Systems, HMSA, was only going to allow you to do it if you got approval ahead of time, and the first visit had to be offered face-to-face.
Oh, wow.
Another one that I have, and I forget which one that was. Integrated behavioral health was one that said they don't allow telehealth, but they are. I think I skipped that one when I was going down this. They are allowing it now during the pandemic. I don't know what's going to happen after that.
Right.
The other thing that you need to be aware of is that telehealth is defined differently depending upon where you're located. So I live in South Florida. The state of Florida Licensing Board does not allow telephone only.
Right.
It must be video. Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, where I'm licensed, do.
They do. Oh.
You can do telephone, but during the pandemic, I don't know, it seems like a lot of them are letting anything go during this time period.
Yeah.
So there are certain ones that told me that, which really surprised me, that they don't allow telehealth by video, but they only allow it by phone. And I'm sort of like, well, that's
Really?
interesting. And so here's one, that's right, Health Advocate. That's one of them. I have it written down here.
Huh.
Telephone only with pre-approval. That's the note I have, which means that if they send a client to me and I'm not willing to see them in my office because of the pandemic, I would have to provide telephone services, but I won't do that because I'm in South Florida, and Florida doesn't allow me to do that.
Exactly. Your licensing board has say in that too, right? Yeah, the state you're in. Wow. Yep. Good point.
I find it interesting that they only want telephone because I find video to be a much more effective format for doing a session. You can see the nonverbals, you can see their facial expressions. I don't tell
Really.
counseling.
I know. I agree with you, actually. It's a lot harder. You just can't pick up on all the nonverbals, you know? Yep. No, totally agree. Okay, that's great to know. So most of them are covering. That's awesome. And the last question is just, is there anything else you think would be helpful for people to know that we didn't cover as far as telehealth or as far as the EAPs go?
No, not really. Again, just understand some of them are integrated with some EAPs you're on automatically. If you credential with United, if you credential with Cigna, if you credential with Humana, it's part of your contract.
Right.
But there's a lot of standalone EAPs that's all they do. And they're really worth looking into because they're easy to work with. It's a 45-minute session. Your notes are not nearly as detailed.
Mm-hmm.
So getting paid less, you're doing, it's not quite as, you're not working as many hours and you're not doing the paperwork is a lot less extensive. So
yeah,
it's worth it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I think it's going to help a lot of people because I think EAPs are a good way to get in the door, especially if you're just like starting out in your practice.
Yeah, well, Kim, getting in the door is what I did 20 years ago. I got in the door, and guess what? I stayed in the door.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it works for
It
you.
worked well for you, yes. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure everybody else does too.
Okay, have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.